Okay, hey, welcome to the iPad podcast, and this is Lex at maxfuture.com, and today is Sunday, May 15th, the smack middle of May, and there's a lot of iPad news this week, and I'm going to go over various apps and devices that relate to the iPad, and talk about iPad business news, and thanks for listening. This is, again, a commercial-free podcast and a chit-chat-free podcast. I just go straight to iPad-related news. So let's get to it. Okay, so the first story is that the iPad may have a real competitor at last, something that doesn't really stink. And earlier this week, Google had its what's known as the I/O conference. This is a conference for developers and people interested in, developing for Google. And it released various new devices. And I guess it handed out a new Google Android tablet from Samsung called the Galaxy Tab 10.1. And the 10.1 Galaxy Tab is being considered by some to be a real, the first real competitor as a tablet that doesn't stink, that can in some ways compete with the iPad. So Xconomy, a website, Xconomy, had an article that came out on Friday, May 13th, entitled "The iPad Finally Has a Worthy Rival, Samsung's Galaxy Tab 10.1." And it gives an indication of what this device is like. Let's talk about some of the specs. First of all, the Galaxy Tab 10.1 will be available in the U.S. retail stores starting in June 8th at price points that matches Apple's $499 for a 16-gigabyte unit, $599 for a 32-gigabyte unit, but there is no 64-gigabyte version. So that might be a turnoff for somebody who wants a lot of storage. Now, in terms of the other specs, the weight of the Galaxy Tab is a little less than that of the iPad. Here it says that the Galaxy Tab weighs slightly less, 595 grams compared to 601 grams for the iPad, and the Galaxy is a thinner by a hair, according to this article, 8.6 millimeters compared to 8.8 millimeters. And has a few more pixels. The Galaxy Tab, the 10-inch one, has 1280 times 800 compared to 1224 times 768. The other things that it has is it has two speakers compared to the iPad's single speaker, and also, of course, it has better cameras. The rear-facing camera is 3 megapixels on the Galaxy compared to only 0.7 megapixels on the iPad. But the big thing is you're not going to get as many apps on the Android market, and you're not going to get the sort of support, and also the user interface isn't as nice, Android, as what Apple has done. Here's what this guy from Xconomy says. He says, a word, however, about Android from a user's point of view. And he says, I was an Android virgin before I got my hands on the Samsung device, and I've spent a lot of time this week stumbling over the operating system's disorienting quirks. He goes on to say, let's take navigating between apps as an example. He says, on the iPhone and the iPad, which are the mobile devices I'm most familiar with, the home button on the front of the device always pops you out of whatever app you're in and gets you back into the home screen. He says that with the Galaxy Tab 10.1, while it doesn't have a home button, instead there are 3 inscrutably designed soft buttons in the lower left corner of the screen. He says that one seems to function like a back button in a web browser, taking you back to wherever you were doing just previously. Another one sends you to the home screen, and the third brings up a tray showing the last 5 apps you accessed. He says, I'm not quite sure about all that. The functions of these soft buttons seem to change depending on the context I'm in. And I think he makes a very good point. And what why people may be challenged by using these Android tablets, which is, he says it's overkill, and it provides a perfect contrast between two competing design philosophies. Let's call them simplicity and flexibility. If you believe in simplicity, you pare everything down to one button. You make its function drop dead obvious, and you funnel the user toward the one choice. He goes on to say, if you love flexibility, you go with the 3 buttons, you layer on the options, and you give users an array of possible paths to the same end goal, say opening a new app. Generally speaking, he says, Apple's culture values simplicity, and Google's culture values flexibility, and those competing philosophies are baked so deep into their products you can almost smell them. So the guy's name, by the way, I think this is a really good article. His name is Wade Roush. So he concludes by saying it comes down to a question of which aroma you prefer. The nice thing about the Galaxy Tab 10.1, he says, is that it's the first non-Apple tablet where the rest of the ingredients don't stink. So this is interesting, and I think his philosophy points are very interesting here, which is what Apple's strength is, the simplicity. And that's what's really designed in the user interface of the iPad and the iPhone, and why I think so many people are buying it. Most people aren't into all sorts of complexity with computers. It just drives them crazy. So you want to keep things simple, and maybe that's Apple's biggest strength. Okay, so the other big thing that Google announced this week is that it's coming out with Chromebooks. And these are like small Mac Air-like notebooks that have flash drives and no operating system, just a browser, just the Chrome browser. And they're modeled on the prototype, the CR48, that Google gave out to some people earlier this year. And they go on sale on June 15th at prices, I guess, coming up to like $400 or $500. And, they're basically just a browser on a laptop. And the question is, are they going to be attractive to people instead of the iPad or instead of netbooks? And Cult of Mac has a very funny article titled, or I like the headline, How iPad Will Kill Google's Chromebook. And it links to an article that really goes more in depth about that. But I agree with them. I don't think the Chromebooks are going to do very well when compared to the iPad. And this is what Cult of Mac says. The Chromebook is a laptop designed to run only browser-based applications. The idea is that nothing resides on the device. Everything is in the cloud. It goes on to say the Chromebook is cheap, gets great battery life, and because its data resides in the cloud, any idiot users can use it without screwing up. But he doesn't think it's going to solve the problem that that the iPad poses for it, and that is that the iPad gives you mobility, it gives you flexibility, it gives you long battery life, but also it gives you much more power than just having stuff in the cloud. And Cult of Mac really is riffing off of a story by Computer World called Why Chromebooks Will Fail. And, it really does make a very good point, which is that the iPad really is going to kill it. It goes on to say, thanks to the iPad, consumers have come to expect devices that are aesthetically beautiful, graphically appealing, and fun. And it goes on to say the Chromebook promises only drab utilitarianism. It says app-based touch tablets will be more popular for consumers than Chromebooks for the same reason that American Idol is more popular than C-SPAN. So it goes on to say browsers aren't particularly secure and reliable, and neither are internet connections or websites. And that's, I think, the real problem with the Chromebook. They only really work if you're connected to the internet. The beauty of the iPad is you can still have a great time with it even if you have no internet connection. And I think that's what the point of this article. Why would you get this when you can get a $499 iPad 2, which has a browser in it and which can browse the internet, but can also run apps and be a gaming device and, play with iTunes and all sorts of stuff. So I don't expect there to be too much of a challenge to the iPad from these Chromebooks. Okay, as you know, there's still a wait to get the iPad 2. I think you still have to wait a couple of weeks after you order it online to get it. And it may be that there could be a shortage of labor and materials that's affecting the supply of the iPad 2 given its demand. And TUAW, the unofficial Apple weblog, had a story on May 12th, I guess reporting on something that Digitimes, another website in Asia, reported. And the rumor is that Foxconn, which makes Apple's devices, may not be able to fulfill Apple's upcoming orders for the iPad 2 and iPhone 4. It says that sources from upstream component makers claim the Chinese company is facing a shortage of both labor and materials as at its plant in Chengdu, China. It says this facility is one of several Foxconn locations that manufactures the iPad 2, and that this slowdown could prevent Apple from eliminating its iPad 2 backlog. Well, that's too bad, and I think Apple's going to probably look into other sources in the long run of getting supplies of these key products and key components. So let's hope it doesn't last too long, because I know a lot of people who want to get these iPads, and they just don't want to wait 2 weeks, and they can't really go in the store and buy them. Okay, so let me ask you, if you have an iPad 2, how many of you are actually taking pictures and videos with the iPad 2 and uploading it to Flickr? I suspect not a lot of you. One, because the backside camera of the iPad 2 is not that great for pictures, and two, it's a pretty big device, and most likely if you have an iPad 2, you probably do have an iPhone with a camera or some other camera. Well, Cult of Mac reports data from Flickr, and apparently, according to Flickr, which is the photo hosting sites, pretty much the headline is pretty much no one's using the iPad 2's much anticipated camera. And so, what the article says is that statistics from Flickr show that very few users are using or uploading pictures from their iPad to Flickr. And according to this article, it says, according to the data culled together by the guys over at Electric Pig, I don't know what Electric Pig is, some site that maybe analyzes photos online, it says just 22 Flickr users out of more than 40 million are actually using their iPad 2's camera to take snapshots. It goes on to say that makes the iPad 2 more than 200 times less popular than the iPhone 4. Still, at least the iPad 2 photographers are prolific. They've already managed to rack up 12,570 photo uploads between them. So that's pretty amazing. Only 22 Flickr users have uploaded over 12,000 photos. So, look, I'm not surprised that there's not a lot of iPad 2 photos on Flickr. I think the main purpose of these cameras are for video conferencing or taking a video of someone. I don't really think that they're the ideal photo tool. So what will the future iPad screen look like? By future, I mean the iPad 3, which is inevitably going to come because we now have the iPad 2. Well, word comes that Samsung has just announced a display that has many more pixels than the current iPad. And Samsung, according to TUAW, will demonstrate a 10.1-inch display at the CID Display Week 2011 International Symposium this coming week. And apparently this new display will have a resolution of 2,560 times 1,600 resolution, which is far exceeding anything on the tablet market today. So at 300 dpi, the article says, the display also compares favorably with the Retina display resolution of Apple's iPhone 4. It also apparently will draw 40% less power. So the current iPad resolution is 1024 times 768. So that would totally double the resolution. And Samsung is a supplier to Apple, and this screen of 10.1 inches exceeds Apple's 9.7 inch screen size. But even though Apple has sued Samsung for patent and trademark infringement, I do think Samsung is going to remain a supplier, and it would be nice to see this in future iPad screens. Can you imagine how much resolution that is? To give you a sense of how massive that resolution is, how does it compare to the 27-inch iMac? Now, I have a 27-inch iMac, and its resolution is 2,560 times 1,400. So that would have even more pixels in a 10-inch screen, because that's 2,560 times 1,600. So we can expect that. I mean, it makes sense that Apple eventually is going to have more pixel concentration in the iPad. Okay, so remember how a lot of the newspapers and magazines that were going to be selling through the iPad, that they were hesitant to have their magazines and newspapers sell through the iPad, particularly because of Apple's subscription service. They didn't want to go with that because Apple wasn't going to share automatically the information about users. Well, there's new data out now regarding how people subscribing to newspapers and magazines on the iPad are doing regarding sharing information. And remember, Apple gives users the option of opting in to offer their information to the publishers. And it says here that it turns out that 50% are now opting in to allow publishers to have their information. And it said, this comes from Forbes, according to TWA, that Apple has confirmed that 50% of subscribers are providing their information anyway, opting in. And so I guess we're going to see more magazines and more newspapers on the iPad, because this was seen as an insurmountable obstacle before, and it's no longer an insurmountable obstacle. So this information was on the Forbes blog, and I think this is a good sign. I mean, not everybody is paranoid and into like, oh, I don't want anybody to know anything about me. And a lot of people sometimes say, yes, send me more stuff. And no, I want you to know more about me. So, the fears that the publishers had aren't going to be there, because it looks like everyday people are allowing Apple to send information to the publishers. Speaking of newspapers and magazines on the iPad, I think I mentioned last week how the New Yorker had finally offered a subscription service, and actually all of Condé Nast has now put its magazines on the iPad and is going with Apple's subscription service. And what's interesting is I was able to activate my subscription on the New Yorker. Now, here's the beauty of it. If you already have a paper subscription with the New Yorker, you can, for free, activate the digital version of the New Yorker, including the archive of a lot of New Yorker magazines on the iPad. So it's a win-win. And if you don't have the paper version, New Yorker is now offered as a monthly subscription for $5.99, automatically renewed until canceled. So that's $6 a month, or $59.99 for a 1-year subscription. So $6 a month times 12 is $72 a year. So you save $12 by going for a year subscription. But here's a dirty little secret, which is you can negotiate the paper version of the New Yorker down with the New Yorker. My wife, I didn't realize, had been for years negotiating with the New Yorker and got really sweet deals. I think if you're getting the paper version of the New Yorker, the official yearly subscription prices, I think, is something like either $59.99 or $69.99 a year. And I asked my wife, how much are we paying for the paper version of the New Yorker? And she said, we're paying only $29 a year, $29.99. And I said, how is that possible? She said, well, I've had a subscription with them for many years. And when renewal time comes, I call them up and say, I'm willing to keep it if you can give me this rate or that rate. And they're very flexible. Because the reality is they want subscribers because they're getting a lot of the revenue through the ads. So one of the sad things about the digital version of the subscriptions through the Apple subscription service is you can't really negotiate digitally. So let's say I wanted to negotiate with the New Yorker. They're not going to reduce the digital version, I don't think there's a mechanism to do it. So, ironically, it's much cheaper for me to have the paper version as well as the digital version of the New Yorker rather than just the digital version. So there's a little tip. If you want to get the New Yorker on your iPad, it might be cheaper to get the paper version and then just negotiate with them and then get the digital version. Now, it was really easy for me to get the free digital version on my iPad because all I had to do was either put in the account number for my wife's subscription and our zip code, and the account number is actually on the mailing label of your New Yorker, or just put her name and address and our zip code and an email to register, and boom, within seconds, I was authorized to have the New Yorker on my iPad, and it's great. I have it now, and she's got the paper version, and we're both happy. So, I highly recommend getting the digital version of the New Yorker if you already have the paper version, and even if you don't. Okay, every now and then I like to talk about how the iPad is being used in the enterprise, how businesses are using them. And there's a nice story in the Chicago Sun-Times that shows how a restaurant there is using the iPad as a wine list that lets your fingers do the ordering. And this article was by Michael Austin on May 13th. And it's a very well-written article. And basically he went with his brother. They went to a restaurant, and there was a wine list based an app in there, and and this is what he says about it. He goes, I love the iPad wine list. With the double tip of a finger, I could call up categories such as region, type, vintage, or name. I could sort the selections by glass or bottle price, starting at under $10 for glasses and climbing to over $300 for bottles. He goes on to say, when I double-tapped photos of wine bottles, tasting notes from the winemakers popped up. In some cases, photographic maps of vineyards appeared, and in at least one instance, a video featured a winery representative offering food pairings from Chicago Cut's menu for that specific wine. The restaurant is called Chicago Cut Steakhouse at 300 North LaSalle Street. And, it's a great example of how, the iPad can really transform sales. Because, I've always been intimidated whenever I got a wine list in a store, confused, what should I get? But if there was more interaction, more information that you could dig into, what if also the wine app had recommendations from people, user recommendations in the restaurant? It would be a better way to sell wine. So I think we're going to see more of that. The Chicago Sun-Times has some pictures of the writer using the wine app, and you can see him pulling up the notes and checking out the reviews and the information on the wine. So another example of the iPad in the enterprise. Okay, so remember last week I talked about that case, the GForm case, where someone threw it out of a plane and the iPad then survived? Well, 9to5Mac has a follow-up story that says that shows a video of an iPad surviving being run over by a car wearing this GForm case. And here is the video. Let's check it out. But I mean, this is like the ultimate selling point for an iPad case. If it's going to be so rugged as to save the device from getting crushed. Now it's interesting. The case is yellow, and it's got sort of like cushiony like cubes. If you can't see the video version of this podcast, you can't see it. And it looks like almost foamy. So the guy puts it in the case, and it's got like this yellow cushion. Let's go ahead. Let's jump ahead. So it's there's nothing particularly interesting about the case other than it's sort of foamy, and he throws it in the middle of the street. All right. So where's the car going to run over? He throws it again in the street. And let's say, I guess there's a car. Here comes a car, and the car runs it over. Yeah, sure. The car ran over, 2 wheels ran over the iPad wearing this thing. And I mean, it is pretty amazing. It's amazing. If this thing isn't broken, I think it's pretty amazing. And he takes it out of the case, and by golly, it's fine. Wow. Look at that. It's a white iPad, and it's still working. Now, that's pretty amazing. So I don't understand how this case, because the case looks like somewhat foamy and not very solid, but I guess that's the trick. So if you're really looking for a way to really protect your iPad, now apparently there's other stunts like this by the company that makes GForm. Because on this link, it also says they drop a bowling ball on the. They have another video. They drop a bowling ball on the iPad wearing this GForm. Let's jump ahead in this video. But look at this. He's got this container. Oh, let's see. Here we go. He's dropping. All right, here we go. Here's the part of the video. Boom! Look. From about 4 or 5 feet up, he drops a huge bowling ball on the iPad, weighing 8 pounds. So, then they put a 12-pound bowling ball, and the iPad survives. So, look, this is a commercial-free podcast, but I'm pretty amazed by this. The company GForm makes a variety of products, and it's pretty expensive. It says that the GForm Extreme Sleeve is $60, $59.95. On the other hand, it does look very rugged, so you might want to check it out if you're looking for something tough that will survive any sort of crashes and stuff like that. It's described as that it's soft, flexible, lightweight, water-resistant, and can easily be placed into another bag. It utilizes a combination of Poron XRD material and proprietary GForm design and manufacturing, and it has a limitless lifetime warranty. So this is definitely one of the most interesting covers I've seen for the iPad. And if you're looking for something that is claiming to be highly protective, you might want to get it. Okay, so Apple's competitor Adobe, I guess, figures if you can't beat them, join them. Because, Adobe's behind Flash, which Apple doesn't have on the iPad. And Apple got into a spat with Adobe over the fact that it doesn't have Flash support on the iPad. But Adobe knows a good thing when it sees it, and it knows that Apple's selling tens of millions of iPads and that it's a lucrative device. So this week, Adobe announced additional apps. It already has a photo editing app that I've used on the iPad, but it came out with several more. including apps that work with Photoshop, which is the expensive photo editing software that you can run on a Mac. So one app is only $2. It's called Adobe Nav for Photoshop. And basically, it's a way to navigate your Photoshop on your computer through the screen of your iPad. And it says with Adobe Nav, a Photoshop Touch app, you can now use your iPad to activate Photoshop tools and browse and select open Photoshop documents, as long as you have a network connection between your iPad and your computer. And you can also customize your Photoshop CS5 toolbar on your iPad to easily access tools you use most. You can browse, you can reorder, you can view, you can zoom, you can open up to 200 Photoshop documents on your iPad. So it's a navigation tool that you would use next to your computer. You would have this open on your iPad and also use it as sort of like a touch control device for the Photoshop on your computer. And so you do need Photoshop CS5 version 12.04 or later to connect this app. And I don't know, if you have Photoshop on your computer and you have an iPad, I think it's worth spending $2 to check out this app. Now, another app that Adobe released this past week that caught my eye is called Adobe Easel for Photoshop, and it costs $4.99. Now, what this does, it's a canvas where you can actually paint and draw, layers on an iPad. So it is like a painting app. And what it says is you can now use your iPad and your fingertips to create paintings. You can blend colors thanks to a technology, they say, that offers a new kind of interaction between wet and dry paint. And you can enjoy a unique interface. So I guess the strength really, it's less of a drawing app than a painting app, which I think their big thing is that you can mix wet and dry paints to create color blends that are more realistic. You can connect this and transfer your photos directly to Photoshop if you have Photoshop. But you can use it standalone, it looks like. So you might want to check it out. It's only $5. The reviews are kind of mixed. Out of 42 reviews, it only got 2.5 rating. Let me read you some of the bad reviews. It says, "Do not waste your money on this app," someone writes on May 10th. "I would expect Adobe to come up with something with a similar tool set to Procreate or Sketchbook. No such luck. It's a $6 tech demo and not a very good one. You have one tool, a watercolor brush that bleeds like you are painting with actual water. Forget precision. There are no layers, which is frankly unacceptable. Only one level of undo, redo, and no eyedropper tool round out its negative points. The 5-finger interface could work with practice, but seeing as how I'll never spend the time to create something in it is just kind of annoying. Why they bothered with an export to Photoshop option, I'll never know. I challenge anyone to make something worthwhile with it." So look, some people really think this stinks. It seems kind of limited, but on the other hand, it is Adobe, and they probably will update it and approve it. Let's find a more positive review. Let's see. Here's one that's 3. And one person writes, "Clearly some smart people at Adobe have given serious thought to what finger painting on iPad should be like. The fluid dynamics of the pigment bring surprise and a touch of chaos to digital painting." And it goes on to say, "I'm an avid user of brushes and sometimes Sketchbook Pro, but Easel offers a style of painting that is more original and more primal and possibly superior. Sadly, the reliance on Photoshop hampers it. If you are the same Wi-Fi network as your computer running Photoshop, you can export a high-resolution version of your painting directly to desktop app. Sounds great, but Adobe should have given a better option to non-CS5 users. Without Photoshop, you can simply export your painting to your photo library, but it's a very low-quality JPEG with terrible distortion." Oh, so basically, you're only going to be able to export the high quality version of the photo if you have Photoshop. Look, again, if you have Photoshop, you might want to get this. If you don't, I would sort of wait. That's what I haven't bought this app, but it's interesting that Adobe is going to the iPad, and hopefully they'll improve these programs and make them better. Okay, so another drawing app came out this week on May 9th, an app that's only $2 for the iPad called, actually $1.99, called Pen and Paper came out. And it's a very simple drawing app. Let's look at some of the screenshots here. But basically, it's like a pen and paper drawing app. You can select bold, italic, and different colors and alignments. So it's more like a sketching app. And the features of it is that it claims to have smooth pen and zoom, a pen tool with color and thickness, multi-page notebooks. You can insert text, arrow, photos, rectangles, and circles easily. You can double tap anywhere to add text. You can select an area for moving and resizing large areas. So it's a good sketching program, it looks like, for only $2. It has Dropbox integration, and you can PDF and email. So the description of it is, forget your conventional pencil and paper. Pen and paper is a state-of-the-art modernization of the notebook. It enables you to zoom into very small details while you write your notes. Simply pitch and drag with 2 fingers to zoom and pan. This allows you to accurately draw or edit very small details. You can draw with your finger, but you can also double tap easily to add text and add geometric primitives, arrows, and photos. You can move and resize parts of your note easily. So, I'm going to discuss another tool like this, but if you're looking, try out another note-taking and sketching program for $2, this looks pretty impressive. The reviews, 20 reviews so far in the App Store, and it's gotten 3.5 stars. So here's one 5-star review. It says, surprisingly, I'm impressed. I never thought I'd find another great pen notebook aside from Penultimate. All the others are so laggy. I decided to give this one a try anyway. The smoothness in writing just blew me away. Using a stylus feels accurate and really smooth with this app. Also, the zoom feature was what I missed with the other like apps. The paper size options here is brilliant. Add text. Pen and paper just works. You won't be sorry. The only thing I'd like to see is the option to export individual pages or the entire notebook. Right now, it seems to be the whole notebook. Excellent work to the developers. I hope this app stays lightweight and smooth. It's the best and deserves a review. So let's go to a 2-star review. 2-star review, I don't know about others, but I just can't effectively write or draw with my hand hovering above the writing surface. This amounts to a $2 learning experience for me. If a handwriting app doesn't explicitly claim palm wrist support, don't assume it has it. This app looks nice, but I can't use it. So it seems to be lacking palm wrist support. That's a support in some of these writing programs where it knows that your palm is resting on it, and it doesn't view it as like a touch activity, which screws it up. So look, I haven't tested this out. This is brand new, but it's $2. It's not that much. And if you want to try another writing or sketching app, this might be one to try out. Okay, well now let me talk about 2 writing apps that I did buy and test out recently that I do recommend and are kind of impressive. One is $10, and it's called RightPad for the iPad. And boy, how can I describe this app? Well, it's an impressive app because what it can do is it can recognize handwriting, let's say with a finger or a stylus on the iPad, and turn it into text. Now, this is really wild. I was very skeptical of this, and I don't know who was telling me about this, but I tried it out. Oh, yeah, it was on a lawyer blog. Some lawyer was talking about how this is his favorite app, and I was skeptical of this. And at first, it's a little hard, to get used to it. But here's the basics of it: it's got a built-in hand recognition engine in it, and you can, you create like a document, and you start writing, and it recognizes the letters. Now the cool thing is it's very powerful. So you can do stuff like if you misunderstands a word, you can double tap on it, it'll highlight the word, and then there's a gesture that you can do that brings up like a dictionary of words that it thinks it is if you have the wrong word, and you can quickly replace it. But it can also do other things. You can store sort of macros of, like complicated things to type, like your address. And you can create like a shortcut, like let's say you just write with your finger the word ADDR and then circle that, and it knows that a circle around some letters means it's a macro. So if I did that and I defined ADDR as being my home address, it would type in my home address. And you can create and store all sorts of macros in the settings. And there are predefined macros for moving around on the screen. So for example, if you do sort of like a lengthy sort of backward L, that is a carriage return. If you do a sort of lengthy gigantic L, it's a space return. If you do an arrow /left, it goes back a space. But on my website, if you go to my entry 2 days ago, I guess on the 13th, I have a demo video that RightPad put up on YouTube, and it gives you a sense of how powerful this program is. I never thought I would, want to get a stylus for my iPad, but I'm thinking of doing that just to use it for note-taking with RightPad. The beauty of RightPad is that it's integrated with Dropbox and also the email, so you can Twitter. So you could, let's say you wanted to write a tweet, and in the video right now, this guy is writing with his fingers, and it then turns it into text. So you could write a tweet here and then just send it to Twitter. Or you could write an email here and it'll go straight into the email. And it's very powerful. I haven't figured out all of its strengths. And it gets smarter as you use it because it stores the way you write in its memory. And you can clear it out if you don't want to use that anymore and you're giving it to somebody else to use. But it's really very powerful. Now, in addition to just using the whole screen to write, there's another way you can do it where another screen window pops up at the bottom, and that's for your finger to write in. And in real time, you can see the writing there. And let me see if I can fast forward in this video. Okay, so in this video, I fast forwarded, and he's writing. There's two ways to write. One is use the whole screen to write, and it'll put the text up above. But also you can have a drop-down window with a line where you have more precise writing and recognition. And the recognition will happen even quicker when you write in this box. So it's very quick. And for things like punctuation, you have a pop-up window that can come up either by triggering it with a finger gesture. So I don't know, if you're into a lot of note-taking and you're looking for a way to just use a stylus or your finger to write notes and turn it into text, this seems to be the most capable program out there. And I got to tell you, it's sort of blowing my mind away. Among other things, you can... it recognizes math calculations. So I wrote some math calculations by hand, like 1 + 2 equals, and then it just typed out 1 + 2 equals and the answer. And I guess it can do even more complicated math problems. So you have the ability to I guess create folders of documents. It's very powerful, and for $10, if you're looking for something very innovative to use to write notes and do that sort of thing. RightPad appears to be it. Again, only $10, and you can check out the video on YouTube. Okay, so another app that I've been playing around with in the last few days that I recommend is called Notetaker HD, and it's a $4.99 app, and it's very powerful and I guess somewhat unique, but essentially it allows you to write by hand very small notes, and it's very powerful. So the gist is you can do handwritten notes in create documents with your handwriting, and I guess you could also use it with a stylus. But the big feature of it is you can write really small on documents, and you can also write on top of things like PDFs. You can import PDFs. I guess if someone emails you a PDF, you can write all over it and write your signature. Now, here's what's really kind of cool about how you can write small. It allows you to have like a window in the bottom where you actually write, and then you can make that window have a corresponding window that's much smaller, and you can make it as small as you want on the document, and that's how you get really small handwriting on a piece of paper or on the document that you're writing. So in the examples they give in the iTunes store, they show really, really small writing and or sketching by people, and so it's very, very powerful. And I've just started playing around with it, but apparently like lawyers use it, school teachers use it. Let me just go over the key features. You can type blocks of text with optional borders. There are 60 plus highly customizable shapes. You can insert images from the photo albums, pasteboard, or the iPad 2 camera. You can have custom backgrounds from images or PDF pages. You have VGA HDMI support with zoom and pan. You can have wrist guards to avoid inadvertent touches. That's the thing that the other people were complaining about for that other app I mentioned. You have layout variations better suited for left-handed users. You have optional fields in output footers like in a word processor. You have extensive built-in help. You have smooth and crisp ink on screen and in PDF input. And all I can say is like it's going to take me a long time to figure out all the nuances and features. You also have this thing if you want to, like, let's say you typed a whole bunch of notes and you want to like type up what those notes mean. There's like a window where you can type up like in the side what your typewritten interpretation of the notes are. So, I mean, this could have many uses. I mean, one use is obviously note-taking at a meeting. Another use is, since you've got the HDMI and the mirroring out and the zoom and pan, people who are doing demonstrations can, like, mark something up and zoom in on it. Like lawyers could use this to show the PDFs of exhibits at trial, and they could zoom in and pan in and mark up the exhibit and show exactly what's going on there. You could also use it if you want to like sign contracts that are in PDF that come to you. Now the history, well, let me get into the history of this thing. So let me tell you a little bit about the history of this Notetaker HD. I mean, I heard about it because I was watching the video podcast by Leo Laporte called Triangulation, where he has, I guess, famous people or prominent people from the tech industry come and he interviews them. And he had this guy on, Dan Bricklin, who was one of the people who created one of the first killer apps when personal computers came out, VizCal. This is back, I guess, in the 70s or 80s. And this guy, who's like a famous programmer, he's currently working just on this app, and he's constantly upgrading it. So, I mean, this is like a very famous programmer, and he's made this very interesting and powerful note-taking app that just has so many features. So 30 years ago he did VisiCalc, which was the pioneering electronic spreadsheet, and now he's making this note-taking app for $5. So it's pretty impressive. Maybe in future podcasts I'll go more in depth about what it can do. But look, I mean, on his website, he's got all sorts of complex graphs and equations. So it looks like a lot of people scientists and people in school. And look at this one. There's this one. Let me see if I could blow it up. But there's this one note. I guess he gives examples, and it's just so. Look at this PDF. Look at how intricate these notes are. I mean, it's amazing. It looks like you wouldn't know that this was created on an iPad. This looks like the equations and marking up on a piece of paper. If you're listening to the audio version, remember when you were in school and you had a notepad and you took like little teeny notes and you wrote in every little space of the notebook? Well, this is what this program allows you to do. It allows you to create a document that looks like you sat at your desk and you took little teeny notes and drew lots of little equations on a piece of paper. So, again, if you're into your iPad and want to do note-taking, this appears to be the way to go. Okay, so if you're looking for a new file transferring app, there's a new one in the App Store for the iPad called YFiles -HD. That's WIFILES-HD, and it costs $1.99, and it came out in the iPad store. It's on version 1.0 on May 13th. And there are no reviews for it, but it looks kind of interesting. I haven't purchased it, but it's worth mentioning. It basically claims to be an easy way to use file storage sharing. You can transfer files using Wi-Fi or iTunes file transfer to and from your Mac or PC with ease. You can store movies, photos, music, and any other file you wish. So it basically allows file sharing, supports open files and supporting third-party apps. So you can play back movies or music in the app or stream them to your Apple TV via AirPlay. You can view images, text files, page documents, Excel, Word, and many others in the built-in file viewer. You can share files wirelessly to any other computers on the same network. You can email files, rename files, delete unwanted files, view free space available in app accompanied by a pie chart to disable available memory. And it looks interesting. I guess this is in some ways a competitor to the Goodreader app, which can store a lot of different types of media and files. I'm gonna wait. There are no reviews of. I mean, there are no user reviews of this. Again, the Wi-Fi sharing is like with all iPad apps that do Wi-Fi sharing, it gives a web address, and then you go to your browser on the computer and you download or add documents. So, I mean, the user interface looks kind of nice and clean. It's got a clean design. It's $2. So if you're into transferring a lot of files back and forth and using, various third-party file types, this might be just the app for you. Okay, so now I want to talk about my experience using the Time Warner Cable TV app, which is free. I mentioned previously that Time Warner, which is a big cable provider on the East Coast, particularly in New York, came out with an app that allows you to, if you have a Time Warner cable subscription, to see various channels on the app. Now, why would you want to do that? Well, I think it's worth doing it if you're paying this cable bill and have all these channels. Sometimes your wife or your other family member might be watching something on one TV in one room. You want to stay in that room and watch something else. Well, you got the iPad, you plug in your earphones, and you can watch the channel. So Time Warner, I downloaded it before, but I didn't activate it because I had to hunt around and find out my Time Warner online account, username and password, or if I didn't have one, create one, because because that's how you log in. And so if you're in another part of the country, your cable provider may also have an app, or your satellite TV provider or Verizon Fios may have an app. So you might want to go into the store and just do a search in the App Store for the name of your cable company or satellite provider or Verizon Fios. I know Verizon Fios has it. And one of the good things is it works really well. I mean, I have Wi-Fi and I get all the channels. One of the frustrating things is that Time Warner Cable doesn't have all the channels that are available on my TV because, it couldn't come into agreement with all the providers. So I have, for example, Time Warner's New York 1 channel, which is Time Warner's sort of local news channel, which is great, but I don't have like CBS, ABC, just the regular channels, or NBC. What I do have is I'll tell you some of the key channels that I have. I have CNBC, I have CNN, I have C-SPAN. So I get some decent channels. I've got Family Channel, Arts and Entertainment. I've got the Disney Channel, FX. So IFC. So it's interesting. My kids like it because suddenly it's now another app, like in addition to Netflix, that has television or movie content. They don't really understand, my kids, the difference between television and downloading files, let's say, or streaming files like on Netflix. So more and more we're seeing movie and TV content on the iPad. And, I'm totally hooked on this now. I suddenly have all these channels. And what's interesting is all these channels are actually easier to find and scroll than on your TV because the iPad is just much quicker than a cable box. Like the way this app is designed is it's very simple. All the channels are on this screen layer that you can scroll through on the left with simple names, and it's sort of a see-through screen. And when you're not using it and you're watching the movie, the screen slides away. And when you want to see the screen, you just touch the screen of the video you're watching, which is the whole screen, and then the channels come back on the left, and you just quickly scroll up and down. And you know what? This is so much quicker than like going through all the channels on your TV, because your cable box takes forever to go from one channel to another. And even popping up the guide in my my cable box, my Time Warner cable box, is much slower than this. So I think there are huge advantages to using the iPad to watch television content. The funny thing is it does work with my TV. So I could hook this up to my TV and get TV content on my TV through the iPad. Now, why would you do this? Well, think about it. You could save money. Currently where I live, I have 2 different Time Warner cable boxes. And what if I got rid of one of the boxes, like that's in my bedroom, and instead just had the channels on Time Warner cable run to my big TV through the iPad? I would save, first of all, I have to pay a monthly fee for that cable box and for the remote control, and this would save a lot of money because I'd be only paying for one box. So a family that has, like, say, 3 or 4 boxes could get, just iPads and just have one box and save a lot on their monthly fee. So, I mean, right now I wouldn't get rid of the cable box in my bedroom because I still, the iPad version of the Time Warner app still doesn't have, some of the major channels like NBC, CBS. It has CNBC, but not NBC. So if it could get some of these other key channels, I think I would ditch my cable box. Okay, so and good news if you have the Netflix app or the Netflix service, because this week Netflix has added new features to its Netflix app. You now can see subtitles in the movies that you get on the iPhone and the iPad. GigaOM, I read about this story, had the information. And basically, it says that Netflix had been hard at work adding subtitles to its streaming library ever since it announced the availability a year ago, but it has struggled to do so, mainly due to a lack of standards. And apparently, the subtitles are now available on 3,500 TV and movie titles, which make up about 30% of all streaming. And so they had trouble getting the subtitles on the video, but now if they're there, you're going to be able to see it in the iPad and the iPhone. So that's a big addition. I know I like subtitles even when people are speaking in English, because sometimes, my wife and I like to put the volume down, that we don't want to make it too loud. Maybe people are sleeping in the other room, and we'll put the subtitles on to sort of enhance our understanding of what the characters are saying. And sometimes the characters have, big accents or are speaking fast, and you don't really understand what they're saying, and subtitles can really help for that. So that, that really is a great addition. I'm going to try to check out some movies on Netflix on the iPad that use the subtitle to see how well it does it. Okay, well, thanks for listening to episode 54 of the iPad podcast. This is Lex at Mac's Future, and hopefully we'll have interesting stories next week when I come back with more iPad news. Again, this is a commercial-free podcast, and we try to keep chit-chat to a minimum. If you have any positive feedback, I'd appreciate it if you could put it in the iTunes store and rate this podcast, because it helps other people find it. Or if you want to leave a voicemail or leave a comment or a suggestion, you can do so at 617-826-9676, or send me an email at maxfuture@gmail.com. And I've gotten some positive feedback, and I really appreciate the positive feedback, because it helps this amateurish podcast stay on track and go forward. So thanks for listening.